Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you today about something that makes all the difference in life. It's not just what we know, but what we actually do with what we know. The title of my talk is The Gap Between Knowing and Doing. See, most people already know what they need to do to improve their health, their finances, their relationships, their business. The challenge isn't lack of knowledge, it's lack of action. We live in an age where knowledge is everywhere. You can read a book in a day, watch 1,000 videos in a week, take a course online in the comfort of your home. Yet, with all this information, so many are still stuck, struggling, or broke. Why? Because information without application is like seeds without soil. It doesn't grow into anything. Knowing is not enough. Doing makes the difference. Let me give you an example. Everybody knows they should eat healthier, exercise regularly, and get enough sleep. But look around, how many people actually follow through? That's the gap between knowing and doing. Everybody knows that saving money, investing wisely, and avoiding debt is the path to financial freedom. But how many people put it into practice every month? That's the gap between knowing and doing. It's not that people don't know. It's that they don't do. Now, the real question is, what keeps us stuck in that gap? For some, it's fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of leaving their comfort zone. For others, it's procrastination. Waiting for the perfect time. But let me tell you, if you wait for the perfect time, you'll be waiting your whole life. And for many, it's just lack of discipline. The unwillingness to pay the small price every day for the big rewards tomorrow. The illusion of knowledge. One of the greatest traps in life is mistaking knowing for doing. We live in a world filled with information. Every day, we're surrounded by books, podcasts, seminars, courses, videos, all promising to change our lives, and in many ways, this is a blessing. Never before in history has knowledge been so easy to access. But here's the problem. Access doesn't equal progress. Just because you know something doesn't mean you're any closer to success than the person who doesn't. In fact, sometimes too much knowledge creates a dangerous illusion. The illusion that because we understand it, we're already living it. But there's a huge difference between the two. Think about it. Most people know they should exercise, eat well, save money, and invest in themselves. If knowledge alone created results, everyone would be wealthy, fit, and fulfilled. But we know that's not reality. Why? Because knowledge that stays locked in the mind without action is like seeds sitting in a bag. Seeds have potential, but unless they're planted, watered, and nurtured, they produce nothing. The same is true of ideas, strategies, and wisdom. Knowledge can be deceptive because it feels productive. Reading a book feels like progress. Attending a seminar feels like progress. Writing down notes feels like progress. And don't get me wrong, learning is essential. But if learning isn't followed by execution, then it's just entertainment disguised as growth. The danger is that we can spend years collecting insights, quotes, and advice without moving 1 inch closer to where we want to be. That's the illusion. We comfort ourselves with the fact that we know. We pat ourselves on the back because we've studied the subject. We feel smarter, more informed, and perhaps even superior to those who haven't done the same. But knowledge without action is the same as ignorance. It produces the same result: nothing. The truth is, the world doesn't pay you for what you know. It pays you for what you apply. A person with little knowledge but great consistency will always outperform the one with great knowledge, but no application. Knowing how to start a business doesn't make you an entrepreneur. Knowing how to write doesn't make you an author. Knowing how to sell doesn't make you a salesperson. Only doing does. The illusion of knowledge also creates procrastination. You've probably heard someone say, "I'll start when I learn just a little bit more." They take another course, watch another video, or buy another book. But what they don't realize is that action itself is often the greatest teacher. You don't need to know everything before you begin. You just need to take the first step with what you already know. Growth happens on the journey, not before it. Jim Rohn once said, "Don't let your learning lead to knowledge. Let your learning lead to action." That single distinction can change everything. Knowledge that sits idle does nothing for your health, your bank account, or your relationships. But knowledge converted into discipline, habits, and decisions, that's when life begins to transform. So if you want to close the gap between knowing and doing, the first step is to break free from the illusion. Don't congratulate yourself just because you know what should be done. Don't let books and seminars become a substitute for action. Instead, measure your progress not by what you've learned, but by what you've done with what you've learned. Only then will knowledge move from being a theory to becoming a reality that changes your life. 2. The weight of inaction. In life, very few things are as heavy as the burden of inaction. It may not feel heavy in the beginning, but with time, it becomes one of the greatest weights a person can carry. See, when you don't act on what you know, you pay a price, not always immediately, but inevitably. That price shows up in missed opportunities, regret, frustration, and the slow erosion of confidence. Knowledge that isn't put to use doesn't just sit quietly, it slowly begins to work against you. Think about a farmer. He knows when the season comes. Seeds must be planted. Imagine if he says, "I'll wait for a better day, maybe next week, maybe next season." What happens? The soil doesn't wait. The season doesn't wait. And when harvest time arrives, he looks at empty fields. It wasn't a lack of knowledge that cost him. It was inaction. Life works the same way. Opportunities come like seasons. And if you don't act when the season is right, you face an empty harvest later. The dangerous thing about inaction is how quiet it feels in the moment. Skipping the gym today doesn't ruin your health. Spending your paycheck instead of saving it doesn't bankrupt you immediately. Ignoring a meaningful conversation with your loved ones doesn't destroy the relationship in one day. Inaction is sneaky. Its consequences don't strike instantly. They accumulate. And that's why so many people fall into the trap. They don't feel the weight at first. But make no mistake, the bill always comes due. Another problem with inaction is that it creates habits of hesitation. Every time you delay, every time you choose comfort over commitment, you train your mind to accept less than your potential. It's like building a muscle, but in reverse. Instead of strengthening your ability to act, you strengthen your ability to avoid. Eventually, taking action becomes harder and harder, not because you can't, but because you've rehearsed inaction for too long. Now, here's what many don't realize. Inaction not only prevents success, it eats away at self-respect. Deep down, you know when you're not doing what you should. You know when you're not applying what you've learned. And that gap creates internal conflict. You look in the mirror and part of you whispers, "You could be more than this." The weight of that voice is heavy. It drains energy, steals joy, and robs you of peace of mind. On the other hand, action, even small action, lightens the load. Have you noticed that the moment you start doing, you feel stronger? Make one healthy choice, and suddenly you feel in control. Take one step toward a goal, and suddenly momentum appears. Action builds energy, while inaction drains it. Action creates clarity, while inaction creates confusion. The great tragedy is that many people wait until regret arrives before they realize the cost of inaction. They wait until their health fails to wish they had exercised. They wait until retirement to realize they should have invested. They wait until relationships crumble to wish they had communicated. Regret is the ultimate weight, and it is always heavier than discipline. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. So how do you avoid the burden of inaction? The answer is to decide that movement matters more than perfection. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Start with the one you have. Don't wait for the ideal time. Use the time you have. Don't wait until you feel ready. Readiness is built in the process, not before it. Action, even imperfect action, always beats waiting. Remember, you don't have to carry the weight of inaction into your future. You can choose today to lighten the load by moving forward, even in the smallest way. Every step you take closes the gap, relieves the burden, and brings you closer to the life you know you're capable of living. 3. The role of fear and excuses. If knowledge is plentiful and opportunities are everywhere, why do so many people stay stuck? The answer for most comes down to two powerful enemies: fear and excuses. These are the invisible walls that stand between what people know and what they actually do. Knowledge points the way forward, but fear whispers, "What if you fail?" Excuses whisper, "It's not the right time." And together they convince us to stand still when life is urging us to move. Fear is ancient. It's built into us to protect us from danger. Long ago, fear kept people alive. It told them to avoid the lion in the bushes or the cliff's edge. But in today's world, most fears are not life-threatening. They're emotional. We fear rejection, embarrassment, looking foolish, or losing what we've built. And here's the strange part: we often fear failure before we even begin. Imagine that, quitting before the first step because of something that hasn't even happened. That's the power fear holds when left unchecked. Excuses are fear's best friend. Excuses sound reasonable, even logical. I'll start next month. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I'll wait until the kids grow up. Excuses always find a way to sound convincing, but deep down they're simply permission slips to avoid action. The truth is, nobody has perfect conditions. Nobody has all the time, money, or clarity they'd like before starting. The people who succeed aren't the ones who wait until everything is lined up. They're the ones who start despite imperfections. Fear and excuses are powerful because they're internal. Nobody sees them but you. On the outside, it may look like you're just taking your time or thinking it through, but on the inside, you know it's hesitation disguised as wisdom, and every time you give in to fear and excuses, you strengthen their grip. Here's a thought. Fear often exaggerates the cost of action while ignoring the cost of inaction. It tells you if you try, you might lose. But it rarely tells you if you don't try, you definitely won't gain. Fear shows you the pain of failure, but hides from you the pain of regret. Excuses tell you that tomorrow will be easier, but they forget that tomorrow brings its own challenges. There is never a perfect tomorrow. There is only today. So how do you overcome fear and excuses? The first step is awareness. Call them out. Don't let them hide behind fancy reasoning. If you hear yourself saying, "I'll start when I have more time," challenge it. People busier than you have made it happen. If you say, "I'll start when I have more money," remember that many of the world's most successful ventures began with almost nothing. Excuses are not facts, they're stories. Change the story and you change the action. The second step is courage. Not the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. Courage is saying, "I might fail, but I'll try anyway. I might stumble, but I'll learn. I might look foolish, but I'd rather look foolish for trying than stay invisible for never daring." Every time you act despite fear, you weaken its hold. Every time you reject an excuse and move forward anyway, you build strength. Remember this: fear shrinks. When faced, excuses dissolve when challenged. But if left alone, they grow. That's why the difference between knowing and doing often comes down to who listens to fear and who chooses courage. Life rewards those who act, not those who excuse. And the truth is, fear and excuses never go away completely. They're always nearby. But you don't have to let them drive the car. Acknowledge them, then take the wheel. Because on the other side of fear is freedom, and on the other side of excuses is growth. 4. The discipline of small steps. When people imagine success, they often picture it as one giant leap, a sudden breakthrough, a lucky break, or a single bold decision that changes everything. But in reality, success is rarely the product of one big move. It's almost always the result of small, consistent steps taken over time. And here's the secret. Those small steps require discipline. Discipline is the bridge that turns knowledge into action and dreams into reality. Most people underestimate the power of small disciplines because they look so ordinary. Reading 10 pages of a book doesn't feel like much. Saving a few dollars a day seems insignificant. Choosing water over soda doesn't feel like a life-changing decision. But that's exactly why people skip them. They don't look important in the moment. Jim Rohn used to say, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. That's the heart of discipline. It's easy to do the little things, but it's just as easy to neglect them. The difference lies in who chooses consistency and who chooses comfort. Discipline isn't about doing everything at once. It's about doing the right things daily, even when you don't feel like it. It's brushing your teeth every day, not once a year for 10 hours. It's exercising regularly, not killing yourself in the gym for a week and then quitting for months. It's writing 1 page a day, not waiting until you feel inspired to write 50. Small disciplines repeated consistently create unstoppable momentum. Here's the beauty of small steps. They build confidence. When you follow through on even the tiniest commitment, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted. You build integrity with yourself. That's powerful because many people don't lack knowledge. They lack trust in their own ability to follow through. And that trust is only built one action at a time. Think of discipline like a muscle. At first it feels weak and even small efforts feel exhausting, but with practice it grows stronger. The same way you can't walk into a gym once and expect to be strong, you can't practice discipline once and expect results. You have to show up daily. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural. That's when discipline transforms into habit, and habit makes success almost automatic. Another key truth about small steps is that they don't just move you forward, they also keep you from sliding backward. Without discipline, life naturally drifts toward chaos. Without discipline in finances, debt grows. Without discipline in health, energy declines. Without discipline in relationships, connection fades. Discipline is the guardrail that keeps you from sliding into decline. But here's the challenge. Small steps don't give immediate results. That's why people quit too soon. Read a book today. You don't become a genius tomorrow. Save money today. You don't retire rich next week. Exercise today. You don't wake up with a perfect body in the morning. Success requires patience. You have to trust the process, knowing that results will show if you stay the course. That's why discipline is more than action. It's belief. Belief that small steps matter, even when you don't see the results yet. One of the greatest freedoms in life comes when you realize you don't need to do everything, you just need to do something and do it consistently. You don't need to overhaul your whole life overnight. Just pick one small step and commit to it. Write down your goals daily. Save $10 a week. Walk 15 minutes each evening. Those may not sound life-changing, but over time they create a new identity, the kind of person who follows through. So when you think about the gap between knowing and doing, remember this: you don't have to leap across it in one motion. You can build a bridge with small steps of discipline. Each step may look ordinary, but together they create something extraordinary. Discipline may not always be easy, but it's always worth it, because small steps taken with discipline eventually lead to giant victories. 5. The compounding effect of habits. If small steps are the bricks of success, habits are the mortar that holds those bricks together. What you do once may not matter much, but what you do consistently becomes who you are. And when those daily actions are repeated long enough, they compound, creating results far greater than the effort you put in at the beginning. That's the power of habits. They multiply outcomes over time, just like compound interest multiplies money. Let's take a simple example. Suppose someone reads 10 pages of a good book every day. That doesn't sound like much. 10 pages can be read in 15 minutes. But do the math. 10 pages a day is 3,650 pages in a year, which is the equivalent of 15 or more books. One person says 15 minutes a day doesn't matter. Another says 15 minutes a day compounds. After a few years, the difference is staggering. One has read a handful of books. The other has built a library inside their mind. Habits work the same way with health. Walk 30 minutes a day. And after a week, you may not notice much. But after a year, your body feels lighter, your energy is higher, and your mind is clearer. Skip the walk. Eat carelessly. and the reverse happens. You feel heavier, slower, less vibrant. It's not the one meal or the one skipped workout that matters. It's the accumulation of habits quietly shaping your destiny. That's the secret. Habits rarely announce themselves. They don't knock on your door and say, "I'm here to change your life." They sneak in silently through repetition. You don't notice the impact at first, but over time, they build or destroy. A cup of coffee with a friend each week strengthens a relationship. A weekly complaint about life weakens your spirit. Habits never remain neutral. They either compound for you or against you. Here's where most people get caught. They underestimate the long-term impact of small habits because they're distracted by short-term results. They say, "I've saved for a month and I'm still broke," or "I've eaten healthy for a week and nothing changed." What they forget is that success is not measured in days, it's measured in years. Compounding works slowly at first, but it accelerates with time. Just as money doubles faster the longer it's invested, habits reward you more the longer you keep them. Another truth about habits is that they shape identity. The more you repeat an action, the more you begin to see yourself as the type of person who does that action. Read daily, and you start to think of yourself as a reader. Save money consistently, and you begin to see yourself as financially responsible. Exercise regularly, and you see yourself as someone who values health. Your identity follows your habits, and your habits follow your choices. That's why small daily actions are not just activities, they are votes for the kind of person you are becoming. Now here's something important. Bad habits compound just as powerfully as good ones. Neglect compounds. Laziness compounds. Excuses compound. A missed day of effort may not ruin you, but repeated days of neglect build consequences that are just as powerful as positive compound. That's why awareness is so critical. You must pay attention to your daily actions because they're writing your future silently. The good news is that you don't have to be perfect. Compounding rewards consistency, not perfection. Miss a day and nothing breaks, as long as you don't miss too many. Success is not about never failing, it's about never quitting. Every time you recommit to the habit, you restart the process of compounding. So when you think about the gap between knowing and doing, remember this: what you choose to repeat becomes your future. You don't rise to the level of your knowledge, you fall to the level of your habits. Good habits, practiced daily, will compound into a life of growth, freedom, and fulfillment. Bad habits left unchecked will compound into frustration, regret, and limitation. The choice is always yours. 6. The transformation of doing. At some point, we must face a simple truth. Knowledge only becomes powerful when it is translated into action. The real transformation of life does not come from what you know, but from what you do. You can read about success, you can study the principles, you can fill journals with notes, but until those ideas are lived out in action, nothing changes. Transformation belongs to the doers. Action has a unique way of reshaping a person. The moment you move, you start to see yourself differently. You begin to see possibilities, where before there were only theories. For example, someone who reads about running might understand the benefits. They might memorize the training plans, know the right shoes, and study the science. But the day they step onto the track and run that first mile, everything changes. Their body feels it, their mind experiences it, their confidence grows. Doing creates a reality that knowing never could. This is why so many people who never act remain stuck in cycles of frustration. They keep looking for more information, hoping that the next book or the next seminar will finally push them forward. But the truth is, they don't need more information, they need more implementation. What transforms life is not the learning itself, but the application of learning. Doing breaks the chains of hesitation and turns potential into progress. And here's something powerful. Action creates momentum. The first step is often the hardest, but once it's taken, the second step feels easier, and the third easier still. Have you noticed how hard it is to push a car when it's completely still? It takes tremendous effort to get it rolling, but once it's moving, it only takes a light push to keep it going. Life is the same way. Inaction feels heavy because you're stuck at a standstill. But once you act, momentum carries you forward, and suddenly what once felt impossible becomes natural. Doing also teaches in ways that knowing never will. You can study swimming in a book, but until you get into the water, you don't really know how to swim. You can learn about business strategies in a classroom, but until you make a sale, face rejection, and adapt, you don't truly understand business. Doing gives you feedback. It tells you what works, what doesn't, and how to improve. Knowledge fills the mind, but action shapes experience, and experience is the ultimate teacher. Another transformation that comes through doing is confidence. Fear thrives in the absence of action. It grows in the shadows of hesitation. But when you take even a small step, fear begins to shrink. Each time you act, you prove to yourself that you are capable. Each time you follow through, you strengthen your belief in your own ability. Knowledge can inspire, but only action builds confidence. The most rewarding part of doing is the change it brings, not only to your circumstances, but also to your identity. When you act consistently, you become the kind of person who acts. When you follow through, you become someone who can be counted on by yourself and by others. Your life begins to align with your knowledge, and that integrity creates power. You no longer carry the weight of knowing without doing. Instead, you carry the satisfaction of living what you've learned. So here is the final challenge. Don't just be a collector of knowledge. Be a practitioner of knowledge. Don't just admire principles. Live them. Don't just talk about goals. Pursue them. Let your actions speak louder than your intentions. Because in the end, it's not what you know that will write the story of your life. It's what you do with what you know. And if you choose to act consistently, courageously, and with discipline, you will discover something extraordinary. The gap between knowing and doing will close, and in that closing, your life will transform. You'll look back one day not with regret over what could have been, but with gratitude for what you built, step by step, action by action. That's the true power of doing. But here's the good news. You don't have to close the entire gap overnight. Success is not about giant leaps. It's about small, consistent steps. You don't need to run a marathon tomorrow. Just take a walk today. You don't need to make $1 million this year. Just save your first 100 consistently. You don't need to change the world in a day. Just change your habits one by one. Jim Rohn said, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. That's the secret. The little things, the daily disciplines, that's where the gap is closed. Reading for 30 minutes a day. Making that one phone call. Writing down your goals. Practicing gratitude. Investing a little bit every month. Small steps compound. Over time, they bridge the gap. So, here's my challenge to you. The next time you learn something powerful, don't just admire it. Don't just say, that's good. Do something about it. Take action within 24 hours, because knowledge unused quickly fades away. Remember, life doesn't reward what you know, it rewards what you do with what you know. So today, let's commit to being doers, not just knowers. Let's close that gap, step by step, action by action, until the life we imagine is the life we live. Thank you.